Welcome to Unintended Consequences, episode 56 for July 12th, 2026. Today's story is one of those rare examples where the cure was almost worse than the disease, at least at first. In a Manila office tower in 2017, a contractor named Liza sat before a screen that refreshed every few seconds with videos of beheadings, sexual assaults, and live suicides. She had been hired to keep Facebook's newsfeed free of graphic content for users in the United States and Europe. The company's engineers had built automated filters that caught obvious spam and nudity. Yet every day, thousands of edge cases still required human judgment. The system worked exactly as designed. The platform stayed fast, and the visible workforce stayed small. The harm simply moved down the supply chain. In the mid-2000s, executives at Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter faced an obvious problem. User-generated content was growing faster than any central team could review. They wanted the platforms to feel welcoming enough that ordinary people would post photos of their children and share news without encountering gore or abuse. Automated tools could handle volume, but they could not yet interpret context, sarcasm, or new forms of harm. Outsourcing routine review to specialized contractors in lower-cost countries therefore looked like a rational, even responsible way to scale safety while keeping product teams focused on growth. At the time, labor markets in the Philippines, India, and Kenya already supplied English-speaking graduates for call center and data entry work. Extending that model to content moderation seemed like a straightforward extension of existing practice. By 2012, Facebook had begun routing a large share of its most disturbing reports to Accenture and other business process firms in Manila and Hyderabad. YouTube followed a similar pattern after its 2006 acquisition by Google, and Twitter relied on contractors in Ireland and the Philippines. Early metrics looked encouraging. Average review time per item dropped. Removal rates for reported child exploitation material rose above 95% in some categories. Public dashboards showed steady improvement. Company spokespeople described the contractors as specialized safety teams and emphasized that the work protected millions of users. A few internal memos and contractor handbooks warned that reviewers would see graphic violence and recommended short breaks. Yet the dominant message remained that the work was manageable with standard wellness programs. The labor model relied on piece rate pay and strict throughput targets, often 100 to 150 items per hour. Because the most graphic material could not be fully automated, the same workers saw repeated images of torture, rape, and death for 8 to 10 hours a day. Within 2 or 3 years, clinicians in the Philippines began documenting clusters of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress symptoms among the contractor workforce. A 2018 investigation by Casey Newton at The Verge described moderators who kept trauma folders of the worst videos they could not unsee. Some reported nightmares that continued after they left the job. The causal chain was direct. The promise of a clean product for end users required continuous human exposure to the very material the product was meant to exclude. High turnover meant constant retraining, which lowered average experience levels and increased errors. In 2020, a group of Kenyan moderators sued Meta and its outsourcing partner, alleging inadequate mental health support. The case settled in 2021 with undisclosed terms and a commitment to provide counseling. Similar claims surfaced in the United States against Cognizant, which had run Facebook moderation centers in Arizona and Texas. Estimates from industry analysts placed the global contractor workforce at roughly 100,000 people by 2019. Yet almost none of those costs appeared on the platform's public balance sheets. After the reporting and litigation, several firms added on-site counselors, reduced shift lengths for the most graphic cues, and began testing more granular classification tools. Meta announced in 2022 that it would bring a larger share of moderation in-house in some regions and would publish annual transparency reports on contractor welfare. Automated systems have improved, especially for known child sexual abuse material. But every major platform still routes difficult cases to humans. The new layer of oversight itself created fresh frictions. Stricter mental health protocols sometimes slowed review queues, prompting complaints from advocacy groups that harmful content stayed visible longer. Today, the work continues in hybrid form, with contractors in lower cost locations still handling the majority of first pass decisions, while the platforms experiment with better filters and occasional onshore teams. When a product's quality depends on invisible human labor, the true cost of that labor tends to be discovered only after harm accumulates. Incentive structures that reward speed and low visible headcount will locate the difficult work wherever wages and regulatory scrutiny are lowest. Complex systems therefore require deliberate accounting for second-order human effects rather than assuming automation or outsourcing will remain invisible. The same pattern appears today in the training of large language models, where low-paid annotators label toxic text so that end users encounter fewer harms. The question for any organization scaling a digital service is therefore straightforward. Once the difficult work is made visible, who bears its cost, and how is that cost measured before the next expansion? That's unintended consequences for today. If this episode gave you something to think about, share it with a friend who'd appreciate the story. Subscribe wherever you listen, and we'll be back tomorrow with another case. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nerra Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the Nerra Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. OmniView, a balanced daily world news briefing that takes every side seriously. Find every show free at nerranetwork.com. Prefer reading? Today's full write-up, sources, and transcript are on the episode blog at nerranetwork.com. Same briefing, readable format. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.